Good afternoon. Hope you're having a great day. You know, in this week's Torah portion, we read one of the most enigmatic and unique commandments. As the Jews are leaving Egypt, after the death of the firstborn, the 10th plague, God tells Moses, the law, that every firstborn male belongs to God. And what happens is on the 30th day of their birth, you have to have this ceremony you do with the Kohen, with the priest, where you purchase, so to speak, you pay for your child. And the reasoning for this is that God says, when I saved you from the death of the firstborn of the Egyptians, I purchased the right of each firstborn, and therefore you buy it back from the Kohen. And you might have seen the ceremony. It's when a young boy is 30 days old, the firstborn child, and you bring a Kohen and you give him the baby, he holds the baby, and then he says, you give him 5 silver coins, and he says, what would you prefer? The baby, the child, or the coins? And you say, oh, I want the child. And he takes the money, and you say a blessing, Shehechiyanu, and the child is yours. And what kind of ridiculous statement is this? The Kohen asks you, what do you prefer, the child or your money? And 1 second, if you say you'd prefer the money, then does the Kohen keep the child? Of course not. So what's the message here? And why this word, b'may bayis tfei, what would you prefer, the child or the money? And the commentaries tell us something so beautiful, that basically the Torah is asking a question for eternity to every single parent who has a child and has to nurture that child with love and educate the child. What do you prefer? Every father goes to work 5 days a week, 6 days a week. We're busy. We're raising a family. We're trying to support our family. But what would you prefer? If you had a choice to be at your kid's basketball game or at your kid's quiz or at work, where do you want to be? Well, the Torah is trying to tell a father, when you when you have your firstborn and you start nurturing and educating that child, you have to make a decision now. What do you prefer? The money, the power, the affluence, or the nurture of your child? Because only if we choose the child are we going to be able to give them a wholesome, committed education with love that's going to endure and nurture them and guide them in the proper way. Now look what's going around in the college campuses. Look what's going around in the high schools, in the public schools. You see what happened in San Francisco. And you wonder, are we parents putting enough into our child's education, or are we leaving it up to the schools? Are we forgetting our primary obligation? But my boys today, yeah, you could pay someone to educate your child, and you could go out there into the world and make money and be successful. But what would you prefer? Is it the power? Is it the success? Or is it the child? Is it what your child's going to be taught? You control ultimately. If your child's going to be taught ideologies that are in contrast to Torah values, to Jewish values, to basic decency and humanity. Look at what's happening where young people are supporting and cheering for a terrorist organization that butchers and rapes. But my boys today, we each have to make that decision. What are we going to do about the education of our child? And Hayom Yom, the Rebbe says that every day, just like we have an obligation to wrap tefillin, to pray, we have an obligation to think about our child's education every single day. What am I doing to make sure that my child has the proper education, is given the proper values, is taught through the lens that is Torah, that is Judaism? You know, Shabbos is going to be 73 years since the Rebbe, 74 years, since the Lubavitcher Rebbe, blessed memory, took upon himself the leadership of Chabad in the throes of the Holocaust. And I was merited to grow up at the Rebbe's feet all my adolescent young years till I was 17. And I've told you this probably before, but it left the greatest impression on me. Just yesterday, we were looking at pictures to give Necha, where she wanted for a school project the pictures of me near the Rebbe. And I looked at so many of these pictures, and you see the greatest sages, people with white beards, successful people, scholars, spiritual leaders, but yet the Rebbe always surrounded himself with the little children. I stood at the Rebbe's feet for so many years because the Rebbe put value to the children, to the future, to nurture them, to guide them, to give them the love and the education that they need to become the future leaders of the world. If we want a world that we're going to be proud of, if we want a world that we're going to embrace, that's going to follow in the values that we believe, then we need to make sure that we are raising the children of the next generation. Not some woke person who has the most ridiculous ideas and philosophies, but we have to make sure that we have input in our children's education. And that's why the Kohen at the 30th day of the firstborn asked the father, but my boys, what would you prefer? Is it the money or is it the child? Have a great day.